Hello, welcome to Tuesday Night Live with me, Kim. I'm unevenly ear butt potted as usual. I tend to only wear one at a time. But it switches back and forth. When one dies, I go to the other side. I don't. Does everyone do that? I don't know. I'm always surprised when I see people with two ear pods, and unless I'm listening to like music I'm really into, and then I'll do it, like for a walk or something like that. Anyway, but I'm coming to you with an updo from Berkeley, California, in a old cardigan sweater. But I felt like a cardigan today. It's a cardi day. So I'm here for questions, to answer any questions, hear about what you want to hear about, talk about what you want to talk about. And I am glad to do it. My very talented boyfriend made me a little present. Isn't this cute? He he took just a piece of glass and then I guess they call it you like can make like it's like how ancient people made arrowheads and things. There's a nap. You nap it. That's what it's called. We made this little star out of glass. It's made out of glass. So very sweet. Right? I can't make jewelry. I like it's just a little desk ornament. Anyway, but so that's what happened this week. I haven't really cooked anything interesting this week. It's just been get stuff done, work on stuff, get tax stuff a little bit more ready for meetings with accountants. Super thrilling. Anyway, if you're here, please let me know. Please say hey in the comments. I'm streaming onto both Facebook and YouTube. And I would love a like, a follow, a thumbs up, or whatever positive feedback you can give because it helps other people see these events. And I would love to have people be able to join us on our evening adventures. I What's been going on in my world? I am just getting ready to go into like the true holiday. I guess what are we? We're right now 2 weeks before Christmas Eve. So getting ready to get into that period. Am I going to create any new holiday recipes? Gift wrapping, all that kind of stuff. It's going to be a little bit different of a year this year because my the kids in the family, the nieces and nephews are in Italy. So with my brother and his wife who live there now with the children, except for the college age child, but she's going to join them. So it's we're going to Zoom with them, but I don't have to go run around and buy gifts for the chillins, which is kind of the priority in a family, right? They're getting gift certificates to things they can buy in Italy, which was which was the request. So I try and do what the kids want because I'm not in their age group anymore by a lot, and I don't know what they want unless they tell me what they want, and what they wanted was money. So that's understandable. So doing that, so not as much wrapping will be happening this year, but that's the way it goes. For those of you that are not yet familiar with me, where have you been? Um, I'm Kim Howerton. I am a health and wellness coach. I help a lot of people with weight loss. I've had my own weight loss journey. I've lost to this point about, well, not counting regain over the course of my life. Because if we started as a teenager, that would be redonkulous. But I am currently now 130, 129, 129, not yet 130, 129 pounds below my highest weight. And so I am also 48 years old at this time. So there you go. Those are my stats. And I just couldn't find my straw. That was also normal for me, being a little bit awkward. And I started my journey 8 years ago on a ketogenic diet. Lost about 60 pounds, went into a big stall, figured a lot of things out, did a lot of learning, learned a ton, uh, did a lot of programs and schooling around health and wellness, changed to a high protein, low carb diet, lost another 40 pounds, stalled out again for a while, did some personal work, restarted my weight loss journey, and now I'm down Another, well, that was 50 because now I'm down 20. So it was like 60, 50, 20. Yeah. So that's kind of how things split up on my weight loss journey. And I currently am pretty happy with where I am, minus loose skin, but that comes with the territory. And I'm here to inspire where I can, inform where I can, guide, and maybe sometimes be a cautionary tale. So I am that girl. So whoever wants to ask me a question, I'm open to answering it. I can just keep blathering on as well. Um, Yesterday, the boyfriend and I were talking about we couldn't come up with the right term. We don't know if there is a term. So you guys know how that is. There's a quote, a famous quote slash saying. I don't know if it's not an exact quote, but the paraphrase is for science to advance, the last generation of scientists has to die, right? What's the name for that? Is there a name for that? We were trying to figure it out because I suggested that it's kind of what they might call like eminence-based medicine, right? So we know about evidence-based medicine. Evidence-based medicine is what we talk about a lot now, and evidence-based medicine is um, basing medical advice on studies and evidence, right? Kind of clear. Eminence-based medicine is, like how people are like, eminence, what does that mean? You know how they refer to royalty? Your eminence. Eminence is like a high status. So, eminence-based medicine is basing your medical advice, theory, and what the right decisions are based on somebody important said it was this way, right? So if like, um, if it's like the top doctor in your system says it is this way, and they just say it is this way because they think it is that way, that's eminence based. Now somebody in a high position could look at the evidence and then do evidence based, but does that make sense? So it's kind of like, because I'm your mother is eminence based parenting, right? And so that is that, but it doesn't quite fit. Anyway, if you have ideas for a term, let me know. Teal, hi. Will my class be beneficial for a type 1 diabetic? I think I've heard you say you aren't medical. Yes, Teal. I am not a medical doctor. I cannot replace the advice of a doctor. I should not. I should not be trusted to do so, given that I am not a doctor. So I cannot advise a type 1 diabetic around how to manage their type 1 diabetes, right? I can't, I am legally, as a coach and a nutritionist, not allowed to prescribe or diagnose or cure. I mean, there's a different term, but that's what I say. Like, I can't make claims that, hey, if you eat the way I tell you to eat, you'll fix this problem, right? um I can do that like in a general sense. I can be like, this is a healthy way to eat, right? But we, unless you have more credentials, like you're a basically you're a doctor or someone who's gone to some type of like a nurse, or those kinds of things, like with true medical credentials, then you're not allowed to make those kinds of claims. And however, I can work with a type 1 diabetic on other things, right? So, as a type 1 diabetic, you could take my class as long as you understood what I would be working with you on would be um, weight loss and weight loss strategies. But then you would have to filter that through safe and effective ways to eat as a type 1 diabetic, and you would have to, either yourself or with your medical provider, have to know, would that require any dosing changes in terms of your insulin needs? Because as a type 1 diabetic, how you eat is very tied, this, I'm telling other people, is very tied to your appropriate insulin dosing. I will not, cannot, should not advise on that. But I can work with you on the first part, right? The weight loss part, the mental part, the energy balance issues. Those are still true for type 1 diabetics. If your type 1 diabetes is well controlled and you have a way to control it, I'm happy to work with you on how to add some other uh, sort of more like mental things to work with your diet and that sort of thing, if that makes sense. But you would need to then not take what I say as meaning anything about affecting the type 1 diabetes and anything we talk about in terms of weight loss. You would have to run through your type 1 filter and make sure that it lined up with what you would do for your type 1 management, if that makes sense. Um, and so like if someone were a new type 1 diabetic, right, who wasn't well, like didn't know how to dose properly for the way that they eat, and they were maybe new to low carb, or new, like something had really changed about their diet, I would say that's not somebody that should join my class. On the other hand, I have worked with type 1s before who'd been type 1 for quite some time, knew how different kinds of foods affected them, and then they could do the mental work they needed to do to take, because I'm not like, you have to eat this. This is the meal plan. It's not like that. It's like, let's look at some mental stuff. Let's look at some, bottom line calorie stuff. Let's look at all these things, and how can what is impacting your weight loss, but that I can only talk to that like in a general audience. And so it's still, some of it applies to a type 1 diabetic because a body is a body at a certain level, but then there's a whole nother layer on top for that type 1 diabetic. That makes sense. That was a lot of talking. Hopefully that made sense. I do give a money back guarantee. So if you're like, hey, the things you're saying isn't going to work for me because XYZ, and we talk it through and we come to an agreement, yeah, that doesn't sound, yeah, even if you joined, take what you can and leave the rest, then, we would work that out in terms of refunding you. Anyway, just letting you know. I don't want anyone to get out of the course being like, that wasn't really what I needed. Some is that people come out of the course honestly saying that's not what I'm willing to do. That is not a refund situation, but I'm happy to work with things. Um, I got it. Yeah. Okay, Teal. Yeah, that sounds great. So I'd love to have you. Have yet to put a link up for people to join, but I will do that soon. So keep your eye out. Hey, Candace, nice to see you. Appreciate you joining in. Silent Runner, yes, science advances one funeral at a time is the quote. Yeah, that is probably one of the quotes. Yeah, around that. So yeah, I don't, but it's like a concept, and I feel like there should be a term. I don't know what it is. Although that's a very short sentence. But yeah, it's like obsolescence science, or I don't know what it's called. But we were talking about it because Eric is not a nutrition guy, but he's a science guy. And so we were talking about how the concept kind of is true in a lot of of science. And he's very into astronomy. I am not, but he's very into astronomy. And so it feels like nutrition science and astronomy are actually two science fields that are both have a lot of this sort of eminence-based issues, like a lot of people saying things are this way because they've always been this way and we've always thought they were this way, and so we can't say there's some way new because they're not. Anyway, so there's a lot of that, like entrenched, maybe that's a good word, that sort of entrenchedness around science. So anyway, who knows. What else is going on? So yeah, in the new year, I will be doing another class, Keto Unstuck. And Keto Unstuck kind of takes people through the various reasons that they may not be losing weight. And I call it Keto Unstuck specifically because a lot of people over the years, myself included, have come to me saying, I've been doing keto. It was great. Then it wasn't seeming to help with my weight loss anymore. So maybe they still feel great. They don't want to like jump ship. They don't want to abandon the cause, but they're not getting the same results that they were once getting in terms of effortless or relatively easy weight loss. Things are stalled. They've been in a long stall. And I know there are a variety of reasons that can happen on a keto diet, on any diet, but on a keto diet specifically. And so we work together to untangle what might be kind of scrunched up in there, because it can be a variety of reasons. For some people, it might be um, what I call BLTs, bites, licks, tastes, and snacks, food that they're not really computing how much it takes a toll on their diet. It can be carb creep. It can be just food creep, which is kind of the first one again. It can be just not understanding your energy needs. It can also be just diet fatigue, right? Um, we often get really tired of being in weight loss mode all the time. And it can get to a place where you kind of become a little bit defiant, like inside yourself. You're defying yourself, right? It's not, it's like, it's kind of a hard thing, right? You're defiant about the thing you're trying to do. And so you kind of start to self-sabotage. And so all of those things and some more can be reasons. Those are kind of mean reasons that people are like, huh, things aren't working out the way that I want them to in terms of my weight loss. And so that those are the things we work through in Keto Unstuck. And some people end up staying keto, some people transition to more of a low carb, some people, really get to the root of it and go back to, their strong keto ways. It, I am agnostic, as they say. I do not It is your life, it is your food. You get to choose how you want to eat. Um, if it's carnivore, great. If it's ketovore, great. If it's low carb, fine. If it's high protein, carb managed, fine. I'm not a super high carb girly, but if you have solid selling points on that, I will listen and we can talk it through. But for the most part, we talk about, just energy principles and how to manage those. And so those are the things that have really gotten me out of my stall, gotten me to a place where I feel fairly confident in my weight loss um, and then also talking about the importance of maintenance, right? Because I don't really want the world to, I mean, it's good for my pocketbook, I'm going to say. If the world would lose a bunch of weight in my courses and then immediately gain it all back and then rejoin my course to lose a bunch of weight and then gain it all back, right? But I don't want that for society. I don't want that for you. I would not feel good as a human. What I want is people to take my course and then lose all the weight or not take my course, whatever. But if people take my course, I want them to lose a bunch of weight that they want to lose, and then easily maintain the weight loss and not have it come back. That's my goal too. So success isn't success until it's sustained success, and so that's my desire as well. So we talk about the importance of maintenance and that sort of thing there. All right. Candace says, I'm planning to start BBBE. That's for those of you that don't know, beef, butter, bacon, and eggs, which is something that the berries do. I mean, lots of people do. The berries do programs around the BBBE. Right after Christmas, so I can start the new year without some of the bad choices I've made since Thanksgiving. All right, Candace. Well, one of the things I will say is, um, you could start now. I mean, I'm not saying you have to be strict, but you can all bad choices can always be reined in. So I don't know how bad the bad choices have been. I certainly include consciously and intentionally include some celebratory foods. So I'm not saying any food is bad. I don't think any food is bad, people. I don't. I'm not a bad food person. I am a food foods that don't serve you at this time person though, right? Like, is that food serving you? Not is that food being served to you, but like, is that food helping you on your journey where you want to be or not? And is the quantity you're eating of it helping you or not? Because sometimes those things have to be looked at together. But I am also a person that is aware that in the period between Thanksgiving and Christmas, actually, I think it's Halloween and Christmas, but basically Thanksgiving and Christmas here in the States, or Canada, actually, they've got an earlier Thanksgiving, is the time of year when, on average, citizens of the United States gain the most weight. So if you actually average it out and you look at how people got fat, most of it happens, honestly. I mean, it happens the other times of the year too, but the most weight gain is in this period. And so what I say by mitigate, which is reduce the harm, kind of that's my understanding of that term. How do you mitigate the damage? How do I reduce the damage? How do I balance things? Is to say, well, maybe on Christmas I will have these special things, and at this party I will have a few special things, but otherwise I'm going to eat the way that I choose to eat all the time, right? And so whatever those parameters might be. So that's something that I do, right? Because the way that I eat is not a carnivore diet. I've done carnivore. I did 6 months of carnivore a couple of years ago. I don't know how many years ago now. Maybe more than a couple. 4? It all blends together, people. But sometime in my 40s covers a lot. I did carnivore. I've done ketovore. I've done all the vores. Um, and so the way that I eat now has some flexibility. So if I want to enjoy pumpkin during pumpkin season, I make pumpkin desserts, but that work with my chosen macros. Or if I want to eat a sweet treat that's pepperminty, I have ways to get that in there without blowing my eating budget. Obviously, something like a BBBE is a much more limited menu, right? Which can be delicious and delightful, and work great. I am pro BBBE for those that choose it. Wow, I just got stuck. It's like my record was repeating. Um, and it's a great elimination diet for a lot of people. That elimination diet can be very beneficial. But you gotta choose your path. Candace says, I'm getting back right now on max 20 carbs. Oh, great. Okay. So you are mitigating. Candace, good job. Until the 26th, and then B. I sometimes say too many B's. Triple B and E. There we go. For at least 30 days, and then I'll reassess. Sounds fabulous. One of the nice things about limiting down your food choices, right, which is what there's 3 B's and an E, so that's 4 letters. Which kind of it is meant to curtail, kind of as it will kind of put these blinders on a little bit, and like I only eat the foods in front of me. I don't eat the foods in the perimeters. And for some people, doing that really, really helps them get control of their appetite again. Because one of the things that is just true is the more of a variety you eat, often you will overeat, because it's actually a trick, right? You guys know this, right? It's a trick of competitive eaters. Let's say you're in a hot dog eating contest, right? And hot dogs have a certain taste, kind of an intense flavor. And what'll happen is the competitive eaters will get to a place where they're like, I'm stuffed. I can't put another hot dog in my mouth. I'm going to vomit. Right. And then they'll be like, somebody give me a milkshake. And you're like, are you insane? That's more food. If you're already super stuffed, how are you going to do that? But it's a new flavor. And so sometimes by just getting a different flavor in their mouth, it kind of resets some things, and now they can eat a bunch more. So if you that's one of the great things. Like if you have the let's say you're having a giant steak for dinner. um, some of us will remember this from our previous days, right? Let's say you're having a giant steak for dinner. You eat that whole steak, you're super satisfied, you don't want any more steak, you're good, you're done. But like once upon a time, I could have eaten that whole steak plus a baked potato and the salad and dessert, because you have different stomachs for different flavors. Not really, but there is a thing that can happen. I only have one stomach. I am not a cow. I guess this cow has 4 chambers, but anyway, I digress. But if you can, with a new flavor profile, you can reset a little bit and have more, feel like you can now eat more. There's something that's called, is it flavor fatigue, taste fatigue? There's a term, and the second word is fatigue, which is, yeah, you get tired of one flavor. And what's interesting is, like, even if it's a really delicious flavor, like a wonderful ribeye steak, it's not like you're like, I hate ribeye now, but you're like, I've had enough ribeye tonight. I'm good. I don't want any more. right? But if somebody put some cheesecake in front of you, you might be like, but I do have cheesecake room. So that narrowing in onto a smaller uh, food list can be beneficial to kind of put some of that self restriction in terms of people's tendency to overeat. Right, because like what do we do at like Thanksgiving or Christmas when there's like a full buffet? Also, what do we do at buffets? Right, buffets, where there's like all these choices of foods, and you're like, I'll have a little of this, and I'll have a little of that, and I'll have a little of this, and I'll have a little of that, and by your plate is like by the end, you're like, how did this happen? I'm bad at this. I'm bad at this because I'm like, well, because suddenly I'm looking at the plate and I'm like, oof, it's too much. It's too much. Um, what's that from? It's too much. No, let me sum up. Is that The Princess Bride? It's The Princess Bride. Anyway, but it happens so easily. But as you're changing from flavor to flavor, it's only a bite or two of each thing. But by the end of it, you're like, I have just eaten 2 days worth of food in one meal because a little bit of a little of that. Anyway, I am 48 years old. There are very few foods that I have not tried before. So I'm not against trying new foods, but I don't need to try a Big Mac to know what it tastes like. I've done that several hundred times in my life, right? Anyway, Candace, what is my opinion on 48-hour? The 48-hour fasts a couple of times a month. I am not the best fasting girly. I'll put it that way. I My sound just went. Hopefully you can hear me again. I am not super fasting girl, but I am pro fasting for certain things. So let me explain what I mean by that. If you don't know how to eat properly yet, let's say you're going from I'm a mess. We were all a mess at one time. So I'm not throwing shade, but you're like, I keep overeating. I keep eating stuff I don't want to eat. I can't stick to a plan. So I'm going to start fasting. I feel like that's premature. I feel like you have to have handled the eating thing and that you're on a way of eating because it's the fasting thing's just like an opt out. And I find so many people are they just yo-yo back and forth between fasting and out of control and fasting and out of control, right? So that I don't support. I'm like, get your eating right first. Then I would say I have no problem with occasional 24-hour fasts. I don't think there's any harm in a 24-hour fast. I think that if you're doing more than like one 24-hour fast a week, I have no problem with time restricted eating at all. I think everyone should be you need at least 12 hours, if not more, overnight. Let your digestion go through, get some rest. It helps your sleep. It helps your circadian rhythm. So I think we should be not going to sleep on a full stomach. So time restricted eating, totally good with that. Up to 24 hours, totally fine with that. I don't like to see it more than maybe twice a week, and only in people that classify as obese. When people are just mildly overweight or not overweight, but just would like to be a few pounds less, the less you weigh, the less you should fast. It's kind of my opinion. Why is that? Because when you're very obese, your body will prioritize weight loss from fat more than muscle. But the leaner you are, the more you have to guard your system from muscle loss. And so if somebody's like, hey, I want to do a lot of fasting, losing the first 100 pounds, I'm much more like 2 thumbs up on that. If you're like, hey, I'm trying to lose the last 10, I'm like, hold on a minute. Let's perhaps do something more like a protein sparing modified fast. Let's make sure you're getting enough protein. Let's make sure you're exercising appropriately so that you prioritize muscle retention. Also, are you postmenopausal? If you're postmenopausal, you have to be more careful about muscle loss. So so I'm pro fasting, but I have a lot of caveats in terms of
when and how to fast. So hopefully that made sense there. But yeah, so that's my opinion on that. Hopefully that explained it. Kelly said, I loved my marshmallow recipe. All right. Is allulose, what a great question. Is allulose the only sugar substitute that you recommend? How does allulose perform in other baking? Okay. So yes, here's the deal with keto sweeteners, right? So there are a bunch of keto sweeteners. There's, I'm going to miss some, but I'll give you kind of the basics. We've got, hold on, tickle in the throat. We've got erythritol, monk fruit, allulose, Boca sweet. There's only one brand, but it's made from kombucha. It's a Boca sweet. Stevia, xylitol. Those are kind of the main ones. Now, monk fruit is kind of unique in that it is super duper sweet. So you only tend to see it in conjunction with other things unless it's in water, right? So when we're talking about sweeteners that you can replace sugar with 1-for-1. And so, like I said, there are blends, but I'm just going to talk about the individual sweeteners. So what is like a white grainy substance, like, that's like sandy, like sugar is, right? Granular. That's the word I was looking for. Granular. Xylitol, allulose, erythritol. It's pretty much it. You cannot use erythritol to make marshmallows. So marshmallows, you can make something that looks like a marshmallow with erythritol. It will be crunchy, which is not a texture you usually want in a marshmallow. So the thing about erythritol is when it cools, so like you heat it up and it melts, but when it cools, it recrystallizes. So anything you cook with erythritol is going to be crunchy or a little crisp, a little sandy. So it works great for a baked good like a cookie, where you need a little crispiness in it, right? And so because almond flour or coconut flour, they don't get crispy. So the allulose can actually, the erythritol can actually give a little of that crisp, a little, not much. So that's why you'd use that in some instances. For marshmallows, to get them the right texture, you could use xylitol or Boca sweet or allulose. The thing about xylitol, I'll say, is it's great for your teeth, apparently. A lot of gum is xylitol. It's poisonous to your pets. So that's a no-go if you have pets. Or not all pets, but just say pets just to be safe. The reason it is it basically causes, essentially, this is what I've heard. In pets, it causes them essentially to go into diabetic coma, which is, but it is not a zero glycemic index sweetener. So xylitol is like 10% sugar. Maltitol, which I don't use at all, is like 50 to 60% sugar. Like it does 50 to 60% the same effect as sugar, right? So xylitol, so if you're really like a hardcore person, xylitol might be a little bit too much of a glycemic effect for people, especially if you're like a diabetic. But it's certainly better in terms of that than like sugar. But allulose is the one that I like the best. Now, there are certain times I can't use allulose, but the majority of times allulose is going to be the number one choice. So allulose makes things soft. So if you put it in a cake, it'll be fine because cakes are generally soft, but you can't use it in a cookie that you want to be crispy or granola. Like if you're making keto granola and you want to sweeten it, then it makes it softer. So allulose does two things. It makes things softer. And if you bake them, it makes them browner. Because it has a very strong Maillard reaction. Maillard reaction is that browning of sugars, why cakes turn brown, why meat actually browns, why everything browns, right? It's that Maillard reaction. And allulose speeds that up. So things with allulose in them, when you bake them, get browner. not when you cook them on the stovetop like that. Like it doesn't, but like in the your marshmallows are not you're not using a flamethrower on them. You can, but and so you're not going to get that browning because the heat isn't going to be in that way. Is this too much information? Probably. So to answer your question, allulose is great for all sorts of baking as long as you're not looking for a crispy effect. Like a pie crust, it's going to be softer than if you used erythritol. But mostly, I know that keto baking is sucky as sucky gets about crispy things. So I don't generally look for crispy things when I'm baking keto. I'm like, we're just going to embrace the softness of things. So I tend to make a lot more custards, puddings, soft things. And for all of those, allulose is fabulous. And so I would say, though I keep erythritol for certain things in my pantry, I use allulose 95% of the time when I need a sweetener. So hopefully that answers your question. I also think from a health perspective, allulose has a lot to recommend it. It actually will help lower blood sugar even a little bit more than if you just didn't use allulose. So that's of benefit. Anyway, so that's my allulose diatribe. For those of you that don't know, I put a post up on Instagram and Facebook about making keto marshmallows. It's very simple. You're cooking allulose with a little water to make a sugary syrup, a sweet syrup. It's not real sugar, right? And then you're in the stand mixer, you've got a little bit of water and some gelatin. And then you let that sit to absorb the water. Then you cook the sugary, the allulose solution until it's very hot. And then you're pouring that into the mixer, getting it started, mixing it, getting it faster. Eventually it makes marshmallow fluff in there. It's like 12 to 15 minutes. It's going for a while. And then you get it expands, you get marshmallow fluff, and then you pour that and flatten it quickly because it starts to harden as soon as it starts to cool, and it's been cooling as it's been in there. You flatten it into a pan, and then it makes a log of you let it sit for like a day, makes a log of marshmallow, you cut it up. That you can also make marshmallow kisses with a pastry bag. I like a disposable pastry bag for this because once it gets all sticky, I throw it away. So I use a disposable pastry bag with just a normal pastry nip, and then you can squeeze it out into little like meringue looking kisses, and they're little marshmallow kisses. So you can do that too. And then what I like to do is drizzle everything once it's done and cut in individual pieces. If you want to make a little candy, is drizzle your marshmallows with chocolate. Oh, and you can flavor the marshmallow. So when you put the hot syrup into the mixer, add a little salt and whatever flavoring you want, like mint extract or a fruit extract or anything like that. How do I keep the marshmallows from sticking in the pan? So first I spray the pan, I use like a 9x13, glass Pyrex. I spray that with some coconut oil spray, or just you like basically use some type of oil in it. And then I lay down a piece of parchment, and then I will have gotten the oil all over my hand because I'll kind of spread it out. So I have the oil on my hands. And if I don't have the oil on my hands, I'll spray my hands with some oil, and then I'll sort of just spread my oily hands around the inside of the parchment. So it's more heavily oiled on the outside, which it's just to stick it to the pan, right? Because then it conforms to the pan well. And then the inside is just lightly oiled. So that's how, and then it won't stick. You don't want to heavily oil the inside because then it makes it goop, like it doesn't firm up on the edges. But then what I do is when it's ready, before I cut it, I lift the whole parchment out of the pan and lay that flat and kind of peel it away. And if it doesn't peel away on the sides anywhere, I'm cutting that off anyway because I want like a sharp edge. Oh, and I oil the knife because the knife will stick. It's all sticky. The knife wants to stick. So I just put a little oil on the edge of the knife as I go through. And so if the sides of the paper are kind of stuck to the marshmallow, you can just kind of trim that off. because it's not going to be a sharp edge anyway. And so I like my marshmallows to have nice edges. So you can just trim it off. But I do kind of a little bit of oil in the bottom, so that peels off fairly easily. So hopefully that was helpful. Candace said, I have been doing 16-8 for at least a year fasting. I would like to be able to get the last 25 pounds off. I'm 68, but I was able to reverse my osteopenia. Well, fabulous. My bone scan last year was normal bone density. Well, that's great, because one of the problems with too much fasting or too much protein restriction is increases osteopenia, or bone loss, because your bone is 50% protein. So what I might say in that case, again, this is not medical advice, I'm just sharing information. I would really think about the balances of protein needs and fasting. And I would make sure that you're doing weight-bearing exercises on every single day that you're fasting, to encourage your muscles to be more active, and that helps you retain them. And also doing weight-bearing exercise to keep your bones a little bit more healthy. And then I would encourage maybe for you to look into protein fasting on the days that you're fasting, which is not a real fast, but consuming low fat, low carb, high protein sources on those days. So that could be something like a protein shake a couple times, or like chicken or lean meat. So that while you're not eating much energy, right? Because fats and carbs are energy sources on those fasting days, but you are meeting your minimal protein requirements on those days. Because I hate to see women lose the muscle mass they so desperately need, as we are postmenopausal ladies. So hopefully that answers some questions, and I will be back next week with more answers to any questions people want to ask. So thank you guys for coming and joining me. All right, guys, I will see you. Bye-bye.